Good evening and welcome indeed to tonight's debate, where we're very pleased to have with us Amy Porter, Communications Officer for Democrats Abroad, France. We are also very pleased, naturally, to have Randy Yellows, President, Republicans Overseas Action Worldwide, and France. So, indeed, you have many sources of insights, you have various sources of news and perspectives. The goal tonight is to let these two representatives talk about their platforms for their candidate on behalf of three primary issues. And they are mitigating crime, effectively addressing illegal immigration, and the economy. Whoever's not on mute, please kindly put yourself on mute. The idea is that each speaker will talk and give their perspective on each topic. And of course, we will, at the end, naturally yield to debate. And with that, allow me to do ladies first. And I'll be turning off the image share right now. And the floor is to Amy for initial remarks, and then to Randy for introductions, and then we'll get started with the first topic of mitigating crime.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here. My name is Amy Porter. As William said, I am the communications officer for Democrats Abroad France, which is an elected office. I'm actually finishing up my second two-year term. I will be termed out next April. Democrats Abroad, if you don't know about us, we are the official international arm of the Democratic National Committee. We were founded in France and the UK 60 years ago, 1964. We send delegates to the convention. We are considered a state party from the point of view of the DNC. There are actually 50 states, 6 territories, and Democrats Abroad. So I'll be addressing the 3 topics tonight. And I guess let's go ahead and let Randy introduce himself, and then we'll get into the meat of things.
Thank you.
There we go.
There we go. I'm just having a difficulty. Just stand by me. I'm here at a hotel between 2 trips, and I apologize if sometimes there's some noise. And so I'm in the process of moving, and we made this appointment. So I am doing this because I highly value the relationship we have with William, and I appreciate the time he's put into it. So just be patient with me if you have a little background noise with me. So my name is Randy Yallows. I started off being the president of Republicans Overseas in 2020, and then of Republicans Overseas Action Worldwide for almost now 1.5 years, 2 years. And Republican Overseas is a little different from Democrats Abroad. It is an arm that's associated with the GOP, but does not participate in the voting process. We're the representative arm internationally for the GOP. Naturally, we'd like Democrats Abroad. We do present the position and represent the position of the GOP locally in each country where we are set up. And as we do here, we represent their interests, we represent their position during elections on all cycles too. In addition, we work to help our fellow American citizens to register and to vote, just like our friends, Democrats Abroad, like Porter and other of our colleagues. We work in tandem, sometimes separately, but we're also here to represent your interests in many, many domains. And today we're here to entertain you, to share the views of our parties and our candidates. So again, thank you, Amy, for being short. I'll be short, and I think we can get at the heart of the discussion. I'll let Amy, if she wants, to take on the first comments, and then I'll move on from there. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Randy. So for the last 2 years that Donald Trump has been running for president, seems like longer, but it's only been 2 years. The Republicans have basically been talking about crime, immigration, and inflation, the 3 things that we're going to be talking about tonight. Now, 4 years ago, that made sense, but unfortunately for the Republicans, they haven't updated their talking points, and crime is down, way down, especially homicides. Illegal immigration is way down, and inflation is cooling. So I'm not sure what their arguments are going to be tonight, but let's first talk about crime. So Homicides down 13%, the biggest drop ever after they ballooned during the Trump administration. All violent crime is down 8%, 6%. Don't have my glasses on. I should put them on, I suppose. Reading from some notes. The places where crime is still the highest tend to be the red states, the Republican-led states, which is interesting, but makes perfect sense because they have the most lax gun laws. And gun violence, as you all know, is a huge problem in the US. So the Biden-Harris administration managed to get through a gun safety bill called the Safer Communities Act back in 2022. Squeaked by with a very minimal Republican support, but we did get a few Republicans, 15 out of the 50 senators, and only 14 Republicans out of all of the House members, but that did get passed. And what that did is it kept guns out of the hands of people who were under 21. It helped empower the Justice Department with new authorities to prosecute arms traffickers. And the Biden-Harris administration has also passed dozens of executive orders to keep dangerous weapons out of the hands of repeat criminals, to hold rogue gun dealers and gun traffickers accountable. And just today, in case you missed it, it was sort of a busy news day today. Just today, there was a new executive order to crack down on 3D printed guns that don't have serial numbers and machine gun conversion devices. Now, what Kamala Harris has announced that she would like to do in a future administration is to ban assault weapons and high-capacity magazines. You might remember that assault weapons were banned many, many years ago, and gun violence, gun deaths went way down. Unfortunately, it only lasted for 10 years and then came back. We would like to make sure that people who buy guns are taught how to store them safely. We would like to require background checks for all gun sales, including in gun shows and not only at dealers. And we would like to eliminate the immunity that gun manufacturers have from liability for what happens with the products that they make. Over to you, Randy.
Well, I love the way my fellow friends, but we agree to disagree. That's part of how we get along so well. So that's the key thing. I think I have a real problem with the numbers you're getting and how they do not reflect the reality in the situation nationally, and if you take them state-wise regarding different types of crimes, especially the rates. If you take the majority of the cities that are run by Democrats, they have the highest rates of murder rates and violent crime, and that's on an ongoing basis. You can just look at the way it's prosecuted, that they don't prosecute in any of the jurisdictions. Look at California, look at all violent crimes are most often not even prosecuted. Look at New York, look at California, they're on the streets. In California, they're all petty crimes, all misdemeanors. As you can see, people on the street, they're stealing, police don't come, they don't prosecute, and they don't do anything about it. The same thing in New York. They prefer to prosecute Mr. Trump rather than to prosecute violent crimes in New York. And that's the way it is. And you have even cases of rapists that are back on the streets days afterwards, and they don't prosecute. But that is a plagued situation that we have in the recent years that have been going on across Democratic jurisdiction. And it's the same type of situation which applies on the national level, because we'll get back to record immigration, but the immigration is such high crime rate that gangs have been coming across arms, fentanyl. I know they just avoided over the last 4 years. We have 100,000 deaths per year. A large number of them are young people that die. They haven't done anything around regarding limiting that type of illegal drug trafficking. We know perfectly that drug trafficking comes from China, and they don't do anything to stop it from coming in. And all they do is they let our 100,000 is twice the number of deaths that our soldiers had during the entire war. We had 50,000 deaths throughout the Vietnam War, and we do that every year twice. It doesn't seem to bother the Biden and the Harris administration. Mrs. Harris doesn't seem to say anything about it, seems to avoid it. It doesn't matter the human trafficking going on. We have 315,000, nearly 320,000 immigration children, illegal immigrated children that have disappeared off the radar. We don't know where they are for this child trafficking across the United States. And the Biden administration does not seem to care. You go into New York, oh, my friends, I know many of you are from the States, from many cities across the United States. You are very afraid in the major cities that are Democrats to walk in. New York has changed. San Francisco, no one will put their foot in there. It's a scary story to walk around at night.
So Randy, we've heard indeed the fear and the numbers that you shared. Could you propose what your candidate is going to do about that? Because that's what we'd like to hear, please.
Yes. Our candidates, first thing is they're going to deal. I have a question for you, William. William, I didn't hear exactly what my colleague was going to say to propose to reduce the crime. And first of all, today is you have to be prosecuted. I already said to you, you must prosecute the whole along all the lines in the Republican states. They must have a strong law and order policy. If our police, the problem is also the Democrats, of course, all the cities, including Mrs. Harris, supports defunding the police. She supported defunding the police in 1920 violence, the 2020 violence that we had. That is clear. Yes, it's clear. I'll be glad to send you links, all of you. If you send me your emails, I'll send you the links where she supported defunding the police. There's no problem. All these can be easily fact checked. Like unlike the debate with the president, she said many falsehoods and she wasn't counted on fact checking. The same thing here, I can provide you. So just send me your question. I'll be glad to provide you with information afterwards to cover that, because I don't take it lightly what I say. Secondly, prosecuting and what's on the books. That is the big major issue. What needs to be done and what has been done and won't be across the board, whether it be nationally and statewide. Mrs. Harris is known and has a history of being light and very, very, very anti-prosecution in the state of California. She has let off violent criminals in California when she was a prosecutor. And this is the same thing going around across all Democratic jurisdictions. So what we would do.
Randy, how long are you going to be talking? Because at some point,
No.
you know, you need to let me jump in here.
Amy, I'll let you jump in. Don't worry. You'll jump quickly. Don't worry. I'll finish up in 2 points. Please, the laws are on the books. You need just the prosecutors and you need to allow the police to do their job, go out, arrest them, and make sure that they don't get back on the street and that they're put in prison as they should be. And already there, you'd have already a major slowdown in crime. Thank you.
Wow. I'm not sure if I can even answer all of that, but over here on Earth number 1, let me tell you how things are going, because you seem to be over on Earth number 2. I do have some slides that I can show you if William lets me share my screen.
Indeed, please
of
do.
how violent crime is down. Immigrant crime is the lowest crime rate in the country. Of course, people who are here who aren't yet citizens are very careful about committing crimes, and they commit crimes at a much lower level than Americans do. I'm sort of fascinated that you're focused on rapists when your candidate owes $100 million to a woman that he sexually assaulted. So let's not complain about the rapist. I don't think anybody's worried about walking around New York City.
That's a misstatement, first of all, because that's not, he owes money in the defamation because it wasn't true, and it's not because it was a.
I didn't decide whether it's true or not. A jury
No,
of
you're
Americans
misstating. No,
decided
go
that
look
it's
up the
true.
decision.
So
Go
he
look up
has
exactly the statement.
been found liable. There is no denying that fact. Okay. Now, let's talk about human trafficking. When Kamala Harris was the district attorney of California, she put human traffickers in jail. She was in a border state. By the way, she's going to the border tomorrow.
Yes. Wow.
When she was first running, the Republican talking points were she's bad for black men. She put black men in jail. And all of a sudden now the talking point is she didn't put anybody in jail. So you're going to have to decide what you want to talk about. But this isn't about crime. It's about immigration. The Trump administration, when they separated families at the border, separated 5,000 families and then chose not to write down where they went. So let's not talk about children that are still out in the country. There are 1,000 of them that nobody's been able to find. The Biden administration was able to put 4,000.
320,000 are missing. Go look at the numbers.
Families. The issue with crime is mainly about guns. We all know that guns are a sickness in the United States, and the Republicans have done everything in their power to make guns as easy to get as possible. And that's really where the crime is coming from. But I can show you some charts if you want. I haven't been able to find out how to share my screen, but it's not a big deal. Go ahead.
Does anybody have questions about, maybe we ask questions about each subject, it'd be easier for your public, there are a
Yes,
couple of
we agree.
questions.
Absolutely. And Amy, once again, please try to share the screen. What I mean by try meaning test it and make sure it works, because both you and Randy are more than welcome to share content. In fact, you're strongly encouraged to do so.
What I can explain to you also regarding the prosecution of violent criminals when, again, when we're on the streets, what we're having the crime rates. I disagree with your numbers, and already I'll bring
Well,
my
let's look at the
numbers.
Disagree
source.
with
We're
my
looking at the-
numbers all you want, but they're facts and they're statistics. So these are the declines in crime rates: homicide, rape, robbery, all sorts of violent crime. This is the crime rate per 100,000 residents, more crime in the red states than in the blue states. Everybody knows that. And that's the rate per 100,000 people. The little bar on the right is this year, how it's coming down. And finally, I'll just go through quickly.
Yes.
The yellow bars are the undocumented immigrants. Far fewer crimes, either drug violations, property crimes, or violent crimes than US born citizens and legal immigrants. So stop with the migrant crime. It's made
No.
up. It's an invention on the part of the
Yes, it's a
Republicans, and it doesn't exist.
Oh yes, like the invention of the busing of immigrants. You know, it was part of the debate, and it was another false hope passed by Mrs. Harris regarding crimes. They were the Haitian immigrants that were brought to Springfield, Ohio, and the high rates of criminality there is unbelievable. And you seem to ignore reality, which everybody can go. I just tell everybody to take a look. You can go into social media and you can look at it for yourself, for what's happening in the streets of our major cities. And many of you have lived it. So honestly, you can present your charts, you can use your numbers, and this is what it's been clear across the board. And it's been across the board for everybody, the sense of insecurity that has gone on, and the numbers reflect the opposite, because you do not prosecute the violent crime, because that is the reality. You can say they've gone down because they don't prosecute. And so when you don't prosecute, it means that, oh, the crime has gone down. So if you were to do your job, then you would see that the crime rate would go up higher.
So you want us
because
to
the
prosecute
police-
everybody except Donald Trump for his crimes?
Am I talking about crime? You want to just focus on the
Yeah,
person himself?
You have a
Of
criminal
crime.
who's a candidate.
Look, okay, that's not finished. It's not even finished the case. It's a criminal. You can go. It's going to go on. It's going on appeal, and we'll see. Like I said, that everybody knows that there's major issues regarding the legal issue and legal stance. Several legal scholars have contested. I'm not going to speak to it because it's even your own, even different people in New York, and it's come out that they said that the basis of the action in New York, you had your own prosecutor from Washington come into the case to assist a local
It's
New
a
York
jury
prosecutor.
who convicted
No,
him.
no, no,
It's
no,
a
no,
jury.
it's a jury. You
And so
can
you're
bring.
saying you
you
don't
bring
agree with the jury system? You're a lawyer.
No,
You
you're
don't believe
look.
in law
No,
and
no,
order.
no,
You don't
no. You
believe
can
in a
press
jury
it.
of
The
their
judge
peers?
didn't allow evidence, didn't allow of things. We'll get to it. Don't worry. As a lawyer, I know perfectly my case. You don't have to slur and badmouth me to want to get your point. You can, if you want, regarding the crime. No, I don't mind, because I know what you're throwing low balls at me, but it's okay. I accept your low balls, because the reality is everybody knows regarding the situation, regarding the crime, and what the reality is in the streets regarding immigration. We just have to look at immigrations and not what people are just walking across, and it's become crime infested across America. And I think that you need to face this reality and trying to create a mirage, because you need to come up with these charts to show to everybody. I think that that's what's going to help you to explain to the rest of America that crime has gone down. There's security across all our major cities. And the numbers that you're using are for 100,000. Why don't you talk about the major cities? I'd like you to get those numbers for the major cities. You selected a chart, but deciding, oh, well, I'm going to choose a certain number of cities with 100,000 people in them. And based on that, I'm going to do a chart. I know how numbers are done with those charts.
That's per 100,000 residents. So the
No,
bigger
the
cities,
per-
it's the way of leveling the playing field.
No,
Randy,
leveling the
you
playing
seem to
field.
think that people
No,
should believe
Amy,
your feelings
No,
above
not my
the
feelings. I have
statistics that
nothing.
I just showed you.
Your
So
statistics.
to go back to fair and balance, and to go back to making reference to some sort of evidence, and the FBI arguably is fairly objective. Randy, could you just provide one source among others that defends and supports the numbers you're giving? Just give us one source of reference. That's all. It's always helpful to have points of reference.
I'll give me
in terms
back
of where
my
numbers-
source. I'm going to pull it up for you, my friends. Why don't we get to another? I'll bring up the source. If you have someone questions, let me get you the source. If that's what if that pleases you, my friends.
Oh,
Okay, let me pull it up. I don't have it on my screen right now, and I'm going to pull it up. Why don't we have questions while we talk about it? This way I'll get you the number. I don't think it's not worth waiting. I'll get it for you anyway while I talk to you. Does anybody have questions in the audience meanwhile for us regarding the issue?
Come on, audience, don't be bashful, please. Just press the button to unmute yourself and ask a question, please. There's also a chat, so if anybody feels that they're unable to unmute themselves, oh, there we go, Sean, feel free.
I'm happy to ask a question. Hi, Amy and Randy.
Hi.
Hi, both of you.
I've talked to both of you. I would love to hear your views on sort of the fiscal sustainability issues in the U.S. And I know that Trump has proposed tariffs across the board. Tell me what you think of that and how that would work, and whether it's really like feasible. And Amy, perhaps you say a little bit about how Kamala might confront fiscal sustainability, just dealing with the debt, and what priorities she might make in going forward. Thanks.
Well, I don't know if you have any questions about crime, Sean, but we have the economy chapters coming in our third. We're on the first of 3 topics, so we will
Indeed.
get to your economy questions momentarily.
Sorry, I didn't catch we were on that theme. I know we were getting into like really like kind of tough issues. I wasn't sure. I thought I would something a little bit less personal but I hear you. What? Sorry, what's the current theme?
Crime, and whether or not it's going up and down, and whether or not immigrants are responsible for crime.
Oh, I hear you. No, I was trying to
down.
change the topic from that. That just seems like a kind of yeah. It's very toxic, the discussion, and yeah.
Well, that was why I just showed facts and figures. I'm not talking about vibes. I'm talking about, measurable crime rate that is going down, despite the Republican talking point that says it's going up. It just isn't.
I guess if you want me to ask a question on that, I guess I would. How do we deal with the epidemic of homelessness in America and which is closely related to also sort of drug addiction on the streets? I mean, I think there are real problems with that, and there's also questions about how to deal with it. And San Francisco maybe is a case in point. There, at least, I think we might agree that there's a real problem. And well, how do we address it? Thanks.
So,
William,
Andy,
how do you
Randy,
want to handle this? This is not one of the topics that we prepared to talk about.
agreed, but since the form is here and he asked the question, feel free, Amy, to give a concise thought while we're waiting for Randy to potentially come back with the data he wants to share, or we just talk about this topic.
Go ahead, Amy. You can make a comment.
I actually have not spent a lot of time looking at Kamala Harris's plan for homelessness. I know that Karen Lee, who is the Democratic mayor of Los Angeles, has been putting into place some exceptional measures to house more homeless people. I got to be honest, it's really not a topic that I know a lot about. I've been out of the US for 35 years, so I don't have that lived experience of seeing lots of homeless people on the street. See them in France, don't see them in the US.
So in which case, perhaps we'll pivot back concisely and maybe finish up final remarks on solutions and proposals. Because at the end of the day, even though the audience is primarily US expats abroad, not exclusively, and perhaps some of them have made up their minds, not all of them have. So here's your forum to influence them and their N+1s and N+2s.
Well, again, it's just what I said previously. I think the main issue with crime is gun violence. Gun violence is the #1 killer of children in the United States before disease, before car accidents, which is pretty shocking. I think that we don't talk enough about the suicide rate in the United States, and easy access to guns is also something that has an incidence there. So, the Democrats' platform for decades has been common sense gun safety measures. to make sure that guns stay out of the hands of people that shouldn't have them. The red flag laws, the boyfriend loophole, which you may know about. And to keep what are essentially weapons of war off the street. No hunter needs an automatic rifle that's designed to kill 30 people in 3 seconds.
Okay, I'm reading an article from the National Crime Victimization Survey, and they said that the FBI's current uniform crime reporting is very little, not very credible at all, and it's a more reliable barometer to use the nation's numbers, where we have, if you look at the numbers of the NCVS, you can refer to it yourself, go to the statistics, the Bureau of Justice Statistics, it's called the National Crime Victimization Survey. They say that in between 20 and 22, in the recent year also, that there's a 43% increase in violent crime, 58% in rape, 89% increase in aggravated assault, and 56% in robberies. And again, this is what's being sent by the Bureau of Justice Statistics, the National Crime Victimization Survey, which says that it is a much more accurate than there's many flaws that have been, and it's considered very highly unreliable by FBI's current uniform crime reporting program from that point of view. So what I wanted to do, I refer the individuals from that. Of course, if I knew they were charged to be available, I'll be glad to say, but I'm giving you a reference if you need to go back and looking at it. You make your own call on that, and I would be glad to further elaborate at one point. But the numbers are there, and you can take a look at that. So that's what I would have to say regarding it. And this is you can pull out a couple of graphs. You have a couple of sources. We could pull out both of our sources, but the situation is very clear. And I don't think you reply to the questions of your policies, Amy, across the board, across Democratic, whether it be California, New York, where the Democrats are in power, and across our current administration, where they are very, very light on crime, and that'd be the least to say. They're very, they don't prosecute, they don't put people in jail. And this is across the board for many, many years. And that's resulted in higher crime rates, higher insecurity. And this is what's happening. Look at the murder rates. It's been crazy what's going on. New York has gone up. You look in Chicago, the situation is out of control. It's gone up by 40% in Chicago, and New York is similar numbers, 30 to 40%. So just take a look at it, all of you, if you want the statistics. Go into those cities, go look them up, and you can make your own choice if you want to do some of your homework. I love your chart. It's very colorful. I'll make sure I put it on my wall. I think we should move to the next subject, because it's a question of playing with the numbers and pulling up a couple of charts. I'll be glad to do it. But like I said to you, that you can take a look. There are many, many statistics out there, and not just a couple of charts.
I don't understand why when I show a chart from the FBI, you say I'm playing with the numbers, but let's move on.
It's not just the numbers. The FBI, excuse me,
you don't believe the FBI. I thought you were the law and order party.
Listen to me. I told you it does not reflect first the situation regarding what's happening on the state level. The FBI doesn't report specific. That you have the Bureau of Justice Statistics, which is a much more accurate reflection of it. Again, like I said to you, the FBI is again a situation where currently the FBI is pulling down. You're busing all these immigrants across all these cities. Yes,
you are. The FBI director was appointed by Donald Trump. I mean,
I'm not talking about the FBI, but I'm talking about we'll get to immigration afterwards. But I think we should follow into immigration, because crime and immigration, they're very linked. Then we can do inflation.
Not at all.
So, I think we're ready to pivot to immigration, but I just want to give, at the request of Henry, the floor to Randy for 20 seconds. Just tell us in a few words what exactly is the solution that your candidate proposes. Let's presume
regarding from which question?
Crime mitigation. So let's
crime mitigation is listen. We've already said it. Crime mitigation requires you. The laws are on the books. You need to prosecute.
Enforce the laws we have today. That's
the bottom line. Okay, that's why it's not being done, and it's clear from the left's and the Democrats' position is they do not prosecute. This is the policies. They do not prosecute crime, and they are very against prosecution. If you are to prosecute, your crime rates will go down. Look at the case study is very clear. Look at New York. When you had Giuliani, when you had Bloomberg, crime rates across the board went down.
Giuliani's hardly a good example.
No. I'm talking about New York's policies on crime. I'm just talking about his policies. Why don't you just try to look at the reality of the situation that under the Democrats during Dinkin, New York was the rotten apple. That's why it
You're
was
talking about 30 years ago. Somebody
no.
asked you, what is your plan for
The
moving
plan,
forward? Don't tell
the
us what
plan is,
happened 30 years
no,
ago.
excuse me, Amy. Am I interrupting you? Do I
What's your
interrupt you?
plan?
What's your plan, Amy? My plan is to just let me talk, and instead of you interrupting me, all right? Our plan has been clear as well. Why don't you guys apply the laws that are on the books and prosecute? That's as simple as that,
Okay.
and crime will go down. That's the key
I
answer.
think we're gonna probably close the door on crime and then officially open the door to illegal immigration and constructive solutions from both parties. So in this case, since Randy's on the screen, tell us, Randy, once again, what your candidate's going to do about illegal immigration. Let's assume that nobody's reading the newspapers or the radio or the web. Here's your forum. Please educate and inform those that want to hear exactly what your candidate wants to do on illegal immigration, please.
In illegal immigration, first, you have an open door policy. Mrs. Harris, I think it's for to create a situation where we have record number of immigrants, where we have numbers from today that are hovering around 12 million document illegal immigrants coming across the border, and we have numbers that are going up to even 20 million, 22 million that we believe that have gone across the border. It's the highest in history that have gone across the border. There's no enforcement. We see waves of illegal immigrants coming in, and we've let criminals come in, gangs. We've let people from all across the country. We've had people from Middle East terrorists who come into our countries, violent criminals, people from mental institutions coming into our country across the borders, and we'll continue doing so, leaving the borders open. And in addition to letting the borders open, there's been a surge in the policies on behalf of the Democrats to provide aid, preferential aid to all these illegal immigrants and bring them across to all the states and give them help, whether it's housing, food, credit cards, and our poor fellow Americans are not receiving the same type of aid, free medical care, and so on. And I think, they can, I mean, today, the cost of illegal immigration is colossal. They send it tens of billions of dollars that this illegal immigration is costing to our national economy is unbelievable. In addition to the ramifications and consequences that we have from crime, gangs, drugs that are crossing our borders. So firstly, we would put back similar policies that we had in place during Trump's term in between 2016 and 2020. Of course, the Democrats were against and they prevented us from building the wall. But again, the wall is one of the efficient measures that helps reduce the possibility of different illegal immigration coming into the country. Again, there's the question of expelling these illegal immigrants that should not be across, and none of the illegal immigrants, the large majority, 90 to 95%, never come to a hearing when they have an immigration hearing. So once they're in the country, they disappear, and that doesn't matter. And again, naturally, the Democrats are not the party of law and order because they create sanctuary cities when you have to apply immigration law. They do not apply and respect immigration law, and they do protect the illegal immigrants in across the jurisdiction. And naturally, Mr. Trump said he would cut down on those situations too. He said he would expel a large majority of the illegal immigrants, especially those that have criminal records, etc., that have been let into the country without any restrictions. And in addition, the key thing is today is also there's many the illegal immigration. They help bring illegal immigrants across the country. The current administration has had a policy in place where they're bringing them in, they're spreading them across all different jurisdictions, which we won't even talk about the policies that they're trying to have them vote in the next elections, because they also provide them with documentation onto registration to vote. It was an executive order. I'll pull it up later for you.
Oh my God.
So Randy, so just to wrap up over the last 5 minutes, we heard 20 seconds of proposal and solution, which is the wall and expulsion. Are there any other solutions you'd like to propose on behalf of your candidate before we switch to Amy and give her the floor?
From what point of view? What do you mean for the 20 seconds? Would you like? I think the immigration laws that are in place that have been in place during the administration. I do not have to further explain that. I think what the policies that were in place, we just have to maintain our immigration laws and apply them, and just again not let them cross the borders. I think again
Very
it's
good.
enforcement. Enforcement. It's the same thing.
Excellent. That's clear. Excellent. Amy, what are your thoughts?
Well, where to begin? 100% of what just came out of Randy's mouth were lies.
Oh yes,
There is
thank
not
you.
an open border. There has never been an open border. The Republicans have been preventing Democrats from solving this issue for decades, because the problem at the southern border is of more value to Republicans than the solution. They can run on that. They can say, look, the immigration, it's terrible, it's this, it's that. From the time of George W. Bush, who tried to fix our broken immigration system, both legal and illegal immigration, even George W. Bush couldn't get a Republican Congress to pass an immigration reform package. So what happened last year? A bipartisan group got together with one of the most conservative senators, Republican conservative senators in the Senate, James Lankford. We put together the toughest immigration bill that's been on the books for decades. A lot of Democrats weren't happy about it. It didn't cover a lot of the things that Democrats wanted to do, but it did add another 1,500 border agents to help with the crossings, the apprehensions at the border. And it did provide for high technology equipment to stop the flow of fentanyl. And what happened to that bill? Donald Trump killed it. He called his buddies in the Senate and the House, and he said, don't vote on the bill because it'll help Biden get reelected at the time that Biden was the candidate. So Republicans have no credibility whatsoever to tell us that we're not doing anything on the border when we tried and you stopped it.
Do you know what the percentage of criminals arrested for assault, robbery, and domestic violence?
I can show you my charts. They're from the
Two.
Border Patrol, but I'm sure you'll
The
tell
Border
me
Patrol,
that
let
they're
me tell
not
you the-
real.
Let me tell you
I
the
won't
Border
bother.
Patrol. You know the
I've
Border
got the
Patrol. Do you know the
statistics
Border
here.
Patrol who decided to say the union of the Border Patrol? They're in favor of Trump.
They were in favor of that bill that Trump
They were in
killed.
favor
They were
of Trump
behind it. And
because
let
you
me
know
just say
they are
another
against
thing
that.
that's important.
They're not important. It's
There are
important for you to
no
know.
illegal immigrants voting in the United States. That's
No,
a
there's no program.
fantasy.
No. That's a fantasy that
All
you're
of
not putting
us
in
who are
program.
Democrats abroad know that when we register to vote, we have to prove that we're U.S. citizens.
No, what are you
So
talking
knock
about?
it
You don't
off
prove
with
anything.
the
No. You
foreigners
don't
are
prove that you're a
voting.
Afghan.
Randy,
Excuse me.
they are
Mail
not.
imbalance.
It's
Excuse me.
false.
Their
It's a
program.
lie.
No, it's not false because there are many ways that no one checks on your citizenship.
You
and
are
there are many ways.
wrong again.
I'm not
William,
wrong
can we
again,
please
my
move
dear.
on?
I
This
am
is
not
just
wrong.
infuriating.
It's very infuriating because I'm always insulted by you guys. But I have the habit. I don't
So
mind.
this is when I take a moment to just pause the audience and ask anybody if they've ever had the experience when they vote where they were not had their ID checked.
Yes,
Anybody
myself
not
in New
have their
York.
ID
Yes.
checked?
I didn't have my ID check. I walk in New York, no one checks you. Go into New York, go to New Jersey, same thing. No one checks you. 18 states in America,
How'd
no
you
ID.
register to vote, Randy? Did you not show ID to register?
No, you don't have to show ID to
Oh, that's
register.
ridiculous.
No, you don't have to register. You don't have to show ID. No, you don't. Excuse me. There's no ID. You register. You don't have to show ID.
It's
You
ridiculous.
You don't have to show ID. You don't have to show ID to put a check into a bank, to cash a check. You need to buy alcohol, to buy cigarettes. You need an ID. But in the United States, in the Democratic states, you do not need to show an 18 state Democrats. You don't need to show
All right.
ID.
To go
Okay.
back to immigration for a second, Kamala
But
Harris
look,
has
let me
already
go.
stated that if she's elected, she would like for the immigration bill that Donald Trump killed earlier this year, she would vote to put that bill into law. And so we would add 1,500 more border agents. And there's a lot of other things that are in that bill. We would still need, in my opinion, to talk about the dreamers, the DACA recipients, the people that came to the United States when they were children, a path to citizenship for those. We cannot deport those people who are now adults who have never lived in their home countries. So that's also something that I think she would probably want to do. And we won't be building a wall.
I don't like walls, I guess.
Oh, I think when we put a
But it's
wall,
true. We won't put walls on it. It's true. The walls, as soon as there's walls on, they put a lot of graffiti on it, so it doesn't matter.
well, unless anyone disagrees, I'm going to put a wall between immigration and our third topic for this evening, which would be the economy broadly presented. Of course, there's lots of ways to interpret what that means, but I think clearly in this context is A, domestic, B, what matters in Americans' wallets, and then three, of course, their confidence in making decisions for themselves, for their families, and part of that has to some degree address the national deficit to some degree, and the brinksmanship that we are all so sick of dealing with. So since Randy's on the screen, Randy, please tell us what your thoughts are in terms of your candidates' responses to the economy, to jobs, and to those topics I just mentioned.
Economy, jobs. Again,
Prices,
now
some would call it the cost of living crisis, or you can simply say
the cost of
inflation.
living prices. First of all, the cost of living prices is mainly done to high energy prices. Again, as soon as the Biden administration got into power, they shut down the Keystone lease that was done, 10,000 jobs. Again, they've gone against fracking in the United States. America was energy independent during the Trump administration. We would bring back the situation we were back at those times. Looking at what the gas prices have more than doubled since the time of the Trump era. And you need energy. Energy is used for everything, and it will trickle into all areas, whether it's for food, finished products, manufacturing. The energy is the key element for holding prices down. So the first thing to do is, again, bring back the energy into make America energy independent, firstly. And that's a key point to bringing down the prices. Secondly, you want to bring back the jobs to America. So that's the first thing. Again, that's what we were saying, and have a policy. And let me explain to you why our policies were very efficient during the Trump era, is that selectively decided to put a selective number of tariffs on the Chinese products that were brought into the United States. These tariffs that were put out, they were criticized by the Democrats highly, and they voted against it when they were in Congress at the time when Trump was in power in between 2006 and 2020. Finally, and there were many executive orders that were put in place regarding the tariffs against Chinese goods and from other different countries where it was meant to protect U.S. industry. Do you realize what they were against? But finally, they realized that it leveled out the market, leveled out the products, and they thought it was a good measure. And our dear Democrats kept them. They criticized them throughout his term, and they kept them afterwards. So that's the first thing already. And you want to give incentive to industries. You want to give to small businesses. Again, we've heard, and that's what the Democrats have been doing. They're going to increase taxes. Again, that's been a key issue. We know taxes are going up. They've always been going up under the Democrats, and they're in a situation where there's such deficit spending. It's spiraling. It's explosive. And we hear economists that our economy is going to overheat under a Biden administration. If Mrs. Harris continues to follow the same Bidenomics, it's going to explode. There have been such amount of spending where it's the roof exploded. And so today, if we do not reduce that spending, we're going to have several issues. And the only way to do so is to, again, bring back the jobs. And that's the key thing, is you have to bring back the jobs, give incentives to industries to bring back U.S. jobs, lower tax rates across the board if you want to give incentives to companies, and create higher spending among the lower middle class to give them, bring them back money again. But it's, again, naturally also what was happening during the Trump era. Again, we left it in the hands of the Democrats in 2020 when they took over. the inflation rate was at 1.4%, not the silly number where it's surpassing around of 9%. That's what they were saying. I'm sorry to tell you that. And you're going to start playing your numbers. And it was already reported when those numbers were just thrown out of the board. I know you like to say that the inflation rate was at its lowest. It went crazy over the board 3 times that amount over the last few years. Now you're pulling it slowly down a little bit, but I still have a lot of work to do, and it's really affecting the Americans' pockets. Again, we're to about 40% on the majority of the goods have gone up, and Americans are suffering. The value of their wages has gone down. Americans are having a hard time, and you will see the middle classes are suffering, and they can feel it across the board. They're living from month to month. A good gauge on knowing how the situation is for Americans. We're at a record amount of credit card debt. All of Americans, middle class and lower class Americans, have stretched out their credit card debt to a high amount because they cannot keep to afford to paying for these high costs of
Yes, but
basic
Randy,
goods.
we agree that you're diagnosing exactly what we all see. So maybe just before we pass to Amy, we just wanted, and you did absolutely address the solutions. Maybe you just want to finish with one other solution before we pass to Amy, because indeed we do agree that
I think
the problems you identified are objective.
and no,
So you
I
said
gave
bring
also a
back the
number.
jobs.
The bring back the jobs, protect the jobs. At the same time, what we need to do is also make it simpler for Americans to start business. I think we need to simplify things today. We also realizing that administratively, it's quite difficult in the United States to be doing different things. I think that we need to also streamline our regulations, and that's also hampering American growth, and that's something that needs to be done. And I think that across the board, and I think that's one of the aims of the new Trump coming in is going to be cleaning that up too. There you go.
Thank you, Randy. Amy.
Okay, before I get into Kamala Harris's proposals, because there are quite a few of them, she made a big speech on the economy last night, in case you missed it. I have good news for you, Randy. The United States produces more oil than any country on the planet right now. We have been energy independent for years, so you can thank the Biden administration for that. You can also thank them for the 16 million jobs that have been created during the Biden administration. And as a matter of fact, since World War II, of the 51 million jobs created, 50 million have been created under Democratic presidents and 1 million under Republican presidents. So the jobs are back. Wages have risen faster than inflation. Now, I agree that inflation is still too high, although right now it's at 2.5%, which is what economists call normal inflation levels. So let's dive into the proposals. First of all, the sort of signature accomplishment of the Trump administration, you might say the only accomplishment of the Trump administration, was blowing an $8 trillion deficit hole by granting tax breaks to the wealthiest Americans and to big corporations. We're slowly digging out of that hole. Here's what Kamala Harris proposes. First of all, no one making less than $400,000 a year will see their taxes increase. 100 million people will see their taxes go down. The millionaires and billionaires are going to get a tax increase. It's time they paid their fair share. Right now, the top income tax rate is 37%. Kamala Harris would like it to go to 39.6%. And given that very wealthy people have armies of accountants who make sure they pay as little tax as possible, she also wants to institute a 25% minimum tax on anybody with a fortune exceeding $100 million. I think that they can probably afford to pay a little bit more. Now let's talk about corporate tax rates. When Trump took office, the corporate tax rate was 35%. He lowered it to 21%. And Kamala Harris proposes we bring it back to 28%, which would raise $1 trillion for the federal government over the course of a decade. For small businesses, she wants to increase the tax deduction for new small business startups to support entrepreneurs. Right now, it's $5,000. She wants it to be $50,000 in a tax deduction for people who start a new business, because the 33 million US small businesses since 2019 have been responsible for 70% of the net new jobs. She wants to stop big corporations from unfairly exploiting consumers while generating excessive profits. We would ban price gouging on food and groceries. For the people, sorry, something just popped up on the front of my screen here.
Sorry for that. I'm putting it off the side.
For individuals, we would like to restore the $300 a month child tax credit, which cut child poverty in half, and which Republicans allowed to expire after 1 year. That was done in the first year of the Biden-Harris administration. And we would like to add a $6,000 single payment in a tax credit for the first year of a baby's life to let young families equip themselves for their child. Finally, to help bring down the cost of housing, which has been much too high for a while, mainly because corporations are buying up a lot of the housing stock. We would give tax credits to those who build homes for first-time buyers and build affordable rental units. We would help first-time buyers with a down payment tax credit of $25,000. And there would be a $40 billion innovation fund to encourage local governments to build more affordable homes. The goal would be to build 3 million homes to ease the housing crisis. So I hope that's plenty of proposals for people who say they don't know what Kamala Harris is going to be doing about the economy. Now you know.
Now you know these proposals. And it's wonderful that she's giving you all these proposals today. She had 4 years with Mr. Biden to do all this work, and they done zero about that, because if these proposals were to work and they were going to do them, they had nearly 4 years to do so, and they didn't do it.
Randy,
So,
what's your proposal besides 200% tariffs on John Deere?
excuse me, the tariffs, we created a situation where we had a record low unemployment. We had a situation where salaries were going up, that there was the job rates that we didn't have to go out and regulate minimum wage. The wages were going up due to demand for people, from employees, they were going up, and people were earning high salaries. People were happy. We were prosperous. Today, you're talking about something which hasn't changed. You're not talking about the prices, people's groceries, gas, and everything. We're talking about 30,
That's
40%.
exactly what I'm talking about.
No, you haven't done anything about it today. Excuse me. Today, you haven't done. The reality is, people in their pocket. You can present another one, job growth. You can present what you feel. But today,
not what I feel.
No, my dear, the majority of those jobs were created for immigrants. And excuse me to tell you, no, yes, no. The large majority, the large majority were generated for immigrants and for low wage jobs that have gone up. Why don't you go across the board? And it tells you, like I said to you, a large number of things. So I believe
Excellent.
that.
No, please,
No.
Randy, finish your thought before I was going to wrap things up, but please finish your thought.
No, honestly, I believe, again, today, Mrs. Harris has sat on the back line and said, oh, wonderful. She's trying to reject Bidenomics that she's been standing behind. And she's saying, I propose X, Y, Z. This will miraculously provide you with a great amount of prosperity. Again, oh, you're saying, oh, there's debt increase. Wonderful.
Yeah.
That's but
8 trillion. You were so worried about deficits. You don't mind blowing a hole in the deficit when a Republican is the president.
No, there's no deficit. You look at the debt. Look, you said the debt increase today. Excuse me. The debt increase was also done to COVID during that time period, and naturally that was part of it. And naturally, look, your chart. You can. I don't know where you're getting your sources from. You put a chart up like that. Everything is beautiful. I know you have pictures. At least on the side of Democrats.
I just made it all up, Randy. I just invented it. I just pulled the numbers out of my hat.
Because, look, I'm not pulling it up because I know what Americans feel. And you guys can say, if you were doing the right job today, we wouldn't be in the situation created by what's happened today. If we had the amount of measures and you properly managed the economy, we wouldn't be where we are today. Exactly. And Americans are suffering. And that's where I'll finish off.
So where we are today is close to the hour. And I think this is a perfect time, since indeed we are all about for the people, that we open the audience. I'm sorry, that we opened the discussion and questions from the audience to our two speakers. So the floor is to the first person who unmutes themselves and asks a question. Please briefly introduce yourself and then identify to whom you want to ask the question first so that it's clear. Thank you. Well, I'm sure somebody's courageous enough to ask a question, please.
There are a couple
And if you have-
questions in the chat. I don't know why people don't just ask them.
I can resurface my question, my economic question that was a little bit out of order earlier, if you don't mind. I'm desperately curious to hear more about the tariffs, the tariff plan. I guess it's more for Randy, but I mean,
Yeah, we think tariffs are a bad idea. We
and then,
think
but if I
tariffs
want to, I
are a
want to
sales
balance things
tax on the
out. So
consumer.
I think my question for my say corresponding question for Amy is like, I know you talked about economic policy, but just how do you propose to deal with the debt? We have very high debt levels now, and like, what's the strategy?
Well, as I've laid out in some of the proposals that I made, by having wealthy Americans and corporations pay their fair share, we would raise $1 trillion over decades. So it's true that we have proposals to invest in the economy, just like we did with the Inflation Reduction Act and the CHIPS and Science Act, and brought back all these manufacturing jobs that were lost during the Trump administration, even before COVID. So that's basically the plan. And we don't like tariffs because we think tariffs are a tax on the consumer. Donald doesn't seem to understand what tariffs are. He likes to say, I'm going to do 10% tariffs and then 20, and some days it's 100 and some days it's 200, and he just keeps throwing numbers out. But in general, we're against tariffs unless there's a specific situation with a specific product where something's being dumped by another country. But no, tariffs are a consumer sales tax. We don't want that.
Look, why don't I also give you a little bit of a hint is that there's handouts given. For example, look, the student loans, we're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars that were given out by the Biden administration, and Kamala Harris also, they have no policies. They want to give out student loans and they don't have to reimburse. They cost billions of dollars. And this is the type of thing to give up handouts for they can get votes. And naturally, I think that's the way they say going to tax the rich. We all live in France, or some people might not. But look at what you do when you start taxing the rich. They start up on top, then they trickles down like they did in France. It used to be extremely high, and it going down, down, down. What happened is all the wealthy, the most wealthiest of industry leaders leave the country. And again, they take all their companies with them and they leave the country. So when you overtax, you kill the economy. So we know that's what they're going to start. And we know it's a sliding scale. And I can't believe it. And it's exactly what the French are. We've gone a very highly socialist system where we know when overtaxing kills the economy. And look at where we are in France. That's where we're going to get to in the United States. And that's what they're proposing, is to look more and more like the France, which is a dying economy. And that's regarding at least the taxing the extremely wealthy from that point of view. Regarding the taxation and the tariffs have to be used as a dissuasive effort where there's no dumping by our competitors from, like in China, where they want to kill our industries. And that you need to protect our industries, because many of our industries don't have the mass critical size. And of course, the Democrats don't seem to understand. That's why we have tariffs put in place, is to protect our locomotives to a certain extent, that they can compete on a level playing field as our adversaries, because otherwise they dump, they kill our industries, and then they increase the prices, and then we cannot do anything about it. So this is how we protect. You need tariffs to be in a certain amount of time to level out the field, and then when things are on time, you slowly reduce them. But again, it gives your industries the time they need to get on their feet.
Very good. Maybe 2 or 3 last questions before we wrap things up. Who else is eager to ask a different question? No one else. Okay, in that case, one
Hello?
final question, please.
Yes. Hi, Bill. Hello, Amy and Randy.
Hello,
Thank you for this debate.
Marielle.
I have one question for Randy. is maybe I didn't follow that properly, is why haven't you been able to show us any charts evidencing the numbers you quoted?
I'll be glad to. Another point, because I didn't know we were going to have the ability to present charts. Amy had the charts. I'll present you with charts that makes you happy next time. That's no problem. But I don't have the charts with me. But there's the information is readily available in a sense. The charts, if you want to look up national crime, you can look up, if you want to look up the charts, you will find them. It's quite easy. Again, we can hand select each of us our charts. I recommend each of you to do a little bit of your own research. It'll take you 5 minutes, 10 minutes of your time based on the numbers that we have. And then you'll make your own opinion, because you shouldn't just believe us after we show one chart, because I'll criticize her chart and her information will criticize me. But I think it's important. You've collected some information regarding what we've said. And again, I love Mr. Opinions are in fact. You don't know not facts. It's not because I pull up a chart. It's just a fact. I pull up another one, can pull up a chart, and we don't know what the factors are using for the charts. You need to go examine charts, and each chart. So I mean, you need to do a little bit more research. It's very easy to weigh how you do a survey. You know how surveys are done. There are different types of criteria, and we can turn the numbers one way or the other. So if I could be criticized pulling up saying, well, this is preferred, and then Ms. Amy will take another graph and another chart and say, well, these are the type of numbers. Well, I think you need to make up your own mind. I think you need to look at, if you want to see how crime is, I think you need to look at the key cities where you have the market. Look at DC, look at New York, look at San Francisco, look at Chicago. Go look at the crime issues there. And if you feel that there's no crime issues, we'll talk again. And you just need to read the news every day. You watch the news locally, and you see what's happening. It's a jungle out there. And again, if you're looking to me just to have a chart, well, I'm sorry, that's not just a debate, but I think you need to follow up. Thank you.
Okay, now as a lawyer, as a trained lawyer, I like to be shown evidences of, statements. That's why I do appreciate when statements are documented. And I understand you said you were not prepared to show those, but I'll be glad and happy to do some research by myself about it.
You shall. I think you make your own opinion about it, because I believe it's relatively clear. I think to say blindly that crime hasn't gone up, the policy of prosecution policies, and I think it's relatively clear. We know the example, what happens when you don't prosecute. You're a lawyer yourself, madam. What's the result when you don't prosecute crime? There's more crime. The criminals are back on the street, and there's no incentive for
Can we
that.
not loop back around to what was already discussed? I think maybe there's
no, but that's talking. But she's asking me a question. I'm replying to her question kindly, and
the question was about evidencing, your
okay. Thank you.
That
no problem.
Only that. Thank you, Randy.
Perhaps one last question, and I'll just observe very simplistically that in Randy's defense, he's welcome to, and he can simply just cite the source. He doesn't have to put up a chart. He can just refer to.
I already gave a source.
Yes, as you did. So that's my point. So not.
I mean, I can't anticipate what my colleagues do. I can come up at another. As I have 10 sources, and if she doesn't have chart to reflect against those sources, it's very hard for a point. And as you saw, let me explain to you what's very important when we do a debate. I don't think a chart is even something that should be used, because if you look at the debates that were done between our candidates, they didn't have charts. They talked about numbers. And I think you, as the viewers and the listeners, need to go back, feel what you think, maybe a few key points. You check up on those points. And if you feel, Randy or Amy haven't been enough truthful with you, maybe I'll think about it. And I don't think I agree with what they have to say. But that's the key point. Our candidates didn't use charts, because, again, a chart in response to something is, again, it gives a certain amount of bias, because we don't know what the basis of those charts are. So that's a real issue. I think we need to debate.
The sources are listed on every single one of those charts. And again, the crime source was the FBI. So knock it off with the fictitious. It's not the fictitious chart, and it's not real numbers. It's the numbers that the Federal Bureau of Investigation reported.
The Federal Bureau wants to bring down the numbers for you guys. I'm sorry.
They're not for us.
Yes, they're bringing down the numbers. It's not the reality of the situation. Those numbers that are being on the chart that you brought, there's a priming. And the problem is the reporting. Let me tell you, what's reported crimes is the number is sky high. The number of reported crimes has gone down because police don't even come. And what's the consequences. That's also, if you want to go look up reporting of crime has gone sky high. And
Again,
that's part of the
we're on
number.
Earth number one over here, where
And I'm on
facts
worth
and
number
statistics
one.
matter.
Yes, Amy, go exactly. Why don't you listen to what statistics are? You need to do your more fact checking. Like I said, your candidate wasn't fact checked during the debate, unfortunately, and our candidate wasn't. So it's very easy to say. So
I
again,
apologize for coming prepared to this debate, Randy.
So in the interest of time, I propose we ask one last
prepared.
question, and I'm going to ask it, and I'm going to ask it to each of you to concisely and succinctly answer a question. We're talking mainly to U.S. citizens, not exclusively, abroad. By the way, we're very pleased to have French and other citizens of other countries attending. What issue is of most importance for your party to expats, and how would your party and your candidate address that issue?
Mr. Trump just made a declaration saying that he would look to proposing and fighting against double taxation. And that's something very important that has come out. He's taken an official position on that, and he knows and listens to the American. We've voiced the Republicans overseas, and we made it a real key point going to President Trump. And I believe that the question of double taxation, again, has been a major issue for all Americans, whether it be on the left or on the right. And you had a clear reply from him that he will fight against that in his upcoming term. And he knows that's very important for us Americans living abroad. And I haven't heard anything. Maybe Amy can say something to that regarding the double taxation, because that's one of the key issues that our fellow Americans have living abroad.
Before we switch to Amy, and I'm certainly looking forward to her remarks, it's remarkable to hear that the candidate Donald Trump actually cares about expats, given objectively his, shall we say, less consideration for those who are not living in the homeland. So indeed, do you believe he's doing that? He's certainly not doing that for the point of view of trying to get more votes, since we all know objectively U.S. expats abroad are a tiny amount. So why? What do you think is the interest behind him wanting to make a difference?
No, we are not. I think he realizes that we need to consider more. I don't think he considered at the prior elections. And I think given the situation, I think he realizes, and I think we've done our good part of a share. And I think the most active, the Trump administration on this election, and I think that one of the only administrations in the Republican that takes into consideration how we considered it to be very important for Americans living abroad. And we've done a hell of a job. I know Democrats abroad does a job on their side, but we've done a hell of a job to educate the Trump teams about the importance of Americans living abroad, that they're an important source. They need to be listened to. We have concerns, and if we want to be heard, and I think that they realize that we want to feel more involved, they have to address our issues, and that's the key thing. I mean, that's the basic answer. That we have votes. We can make people go vote, and we can push the people to go to register, just like our fellow Democrats. And we've been working really hard across all different countries, and we're very proud of it to have given the opportunity to the Trump teams. And I'm glad to say this is a lot of work on our teams across the world to be able to push the Republicans, and you have to give it a hand to Mr. Trump, because he's the first candidate that say a specific position regarding that, and he was willing to take it on, and he's actively pushing this point now.
William, do you want me to jump in here?
Yes, please. I was silent for that reason.
So I'm flabbergasted to discover this statement,
Indeed.
apparently by Donald Trump, because just a couple of days ago, he posted one of his frenetic all caps rants on his social media network about how Democrats abroad were cheating by getting people to vote. So I don't know why he suddenly discovered us, but we all know that we don't cheat when we vote from abroad if we're US citizens. We haven't talked about the single most important issue in this election, which is the rights of women, but I'm not going to go into it because it wasn't on our list. Let me come back to the taxation question. Tax issues are obviously nonpartisan, and when Democrats abroad sends a delegation of our taxation task force over to DC, like they did just this month, 5 people, they meet with both Democrats and Republicans in Congress to try to solve the issues of, I wouldn't say double taxation, but just all the issues around taxation of Americans abroad. There this is not new. There is an Americans Abroad caucus in the House that was started by a Democrat, Dinah Titus of Nevada, who was herself an American living abroad years ago. So she understands the issues of just having to file, even if you don't have to pay your taxes in the US. She's been joined by Don Beyer in Virginia. On the Senate side, Senator Warner, Senator Sanders have also been very proactive about our issues. So we are on their radar screen. We met when this delegation that was just over there a couple of weeks ago met with legislators and the other organizations that are important, like the people at the Treasury, the people at FinCEN, the people at IRS, where we try to educate them on the issues to make them understand that Democrats abroad, sorry, I'm so used to saying that, Americans abroad got caught up in the net of, trying to go after wealthy tax cheats who were parking their money overseas. We all know about that. So there has been substantial progress on these issues, particularly on the retirement front. But the most important tax issues are being reserved for the 2025 tax bill, where international taxation will be a major focus. Stateside financial access issues are also high priorities for our taxation task force. And we have a team right now in DC educating legislators on the issues that are most important to Americans abroad. And in France, we do have this tax treaty with France. We don't want to upset that apple cart. So we're going to be careful about how the specific impacts on each country. There's no such thing as a one-size-fits-all approach for these sorts of things. So we do have a very favorable tax treaty with France. We don't want to do anything to jeopardize that. There is one critical difference, I would say, between Republicans and Democrats, because we are pretty aligned on that taxation issue, other than this one little thing. The new IRS program that allows direct filing, e-file. We've got to get them to add one more form, the foreign earned income exemption, to that electronic filing.
Well, that's essential. Otherwise,
We
we'll have to go
haven't,
through.
right, that program is not yet open to Americans abroad. We're pushing for that to be done. Republicans seem to be opposed to direct filing. I guess they think that anything produced by the government must be bad, but we are working for that. We would like Americans abroad to benefit from free e-filing.
I don't think that's it's an issue. I think that's something that's workable on both sides also.
I love it. The two hands just virtually crossed over and met. Thank you. So on that happy note, are there any final questions, since indeed we are approaching an hour and 15 since the start? Well, with that, I'd like to thank once again Randy and Amy for your time. We do acknowledge that you'll be doing this 3 more times among yourselves, between yourselves, meaning the two of you, and among the other participants at the other institutions. We thank you for your perspectives, your insights, the defense of your policies, and last but not least, of spending some time with us today. Randy, thanks for making the time, since indeed you've been traveling, and it's never easy on a cell phone, trying to get good Wi-Fi connection. So thank you once again for being able to honor the time slot, since we did plan this a good 6-7 weeks ago, and no one ever knows if in fact they will be able to be available at the time they commit to do so. Thank you.
I wanted to be available. I just wanted to tell you because I wanted to be fair. We make the commitment, so even though I might be across the world someplace else, I didn't want to cancel it or do it. I think it's important for our fellow Americans to have the opportunity to hear both of us, and that's why I'm here. So
Excellent.
Again, I want to say that.
Great. The highlights of this event will be edited into a video that'll be posted on YouTube, so that objective content will be there for those who want to listen to it and watch it.
Thank you.
This concludes our event. Thank you so much for your time, and all the best to all of you. And remember, 40 days to come.
Register and
brace
vote.
yourself.
Yeah, register and
vote,
vote.
embrace yourself.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye
you.
now.
Bye-bye.